Good morning and welcome to The Art of Composition. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I did a lot of reading this weekend. I purchased a new book. It's by Lea Colie Wight. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. It's called Foundations of Classical Oil Painting. I added it to my homepage. It's a fantastic book. I read it once. I'm going to read it again. But I thought I would look at one of Lea's paintings today. When I buy a book, I like to analyze a few paintings by that artist just so I can see how they're using the harmonic armature. And all classically trained artists use this harmonic armature as part of learning design. Regardless of what you're told in workshops, colleges, it doesn't matter. The classically trained artist is not going to design intuitively. It's just not a thing. So let me bring up one of her paintings and I'll quickly drop the armature on it and point out a few things. I'm not going to go crazy here, but I just want to take a look at some of her work. Okay, what you see on my screen is a painting by Lea Colie Wight, and it was one of my favorite ones that I came across this weekend. I'm just going to start dropping the harmonic armature because one way the artist can use the harmonic armature is that they frame in their subject. And Julia Aristides talks about this in Classical Painting Atelier, Chapter 2. It's only a paragraph, so you might miss it if you don't know what you're looking for. But she mentions that there are several ways the artist can use this harmonic armature. One of them is to frame in their subject, and that's what Lea is doing with this painting here. And I won't go crazy with this today. Like I said, I'll just point out a few things. But one thing to notice too when I'm dropping these diagonal lines is that notice how the artist is also using the diagonal lines to mimic angles in the subject. And that will become more apparent once I complete the armature. But you can see it starting to happen here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the book a few times before I talk about it in detail. I like to have a full grasp when I start talking about a book. But one thing I will say is that all of these books that I buy, these artists are not talking about the armature. The only book that actually talks about it is Classical Painting Atelier. And even though these books that I recommend are fantastic books, they will not mention the armature or how to use it. They'll talk about composition in vague terms or relate it to something else. For example, in this book, Lea talks a lot about value, and it's just as important, but you can't ignore the armature. When I drop this diagonal line here, notice how it's enclosing this area here as well. But also, when I drop this diagonal line, it's picking up the angle in the subject's arm that's resting on her head. You got the hand here, and then you have the angle from the elbow to the wrist. So that's coming into play already. And I don't have to drop a lot of lines down to show how the artist is locking their subject into place. It's pretty straightforward. And again, if you haven't checked out her work, check out her website. And I highly recommend her book. It's fantastic. I don't recommend any junk on my website. It's all good stuff. You're going to get your money's worth. I believe I paid $12.99 for it on Kindle. So definitely check it out on Amazon.com. All right, so I'm just going to drop a few lines and show you some of these divisions. You have a horizontal line right here with the crease in the chair right there, and that's being derived at this point. So I'm going to bring that all the way over right here. You have a vertical running down here, which is locking in the girl's backside there. And then you have another horizontal line right here with this series of diagonal lines. So I've locked in this area and this area, as well as this horizontal line here. When I drop this vertical here, let me just bring this all the way up. I can drop a horizontal line where that vertical meets the diagonal line, and it closes in the top of this chair right there. And then when I do that, I can drop another vertical on this side. So each line leads into another line. It's like leaving breadcrumbs. And this is why I use the harmonic armature to analyze work. It's much easier than using dynamic symmetry. There is a lot online about using overlapped root rectangles to analyze art. It is a bad way to analyze art. It's not accurate. It's just not a good thing. So I recommend, if you're going to do this, use the harmonic armature, even if you're evaluating dynamic symmetry designs, because it works the same way. I can drop a vertical right here, locks in this area here as well. Again, I'm not going to drop a lot of lines today because it's not necessary. I can drop a vertical right here, locks in that toe, and you have this crease in the where the toes are meeting. This area here that you can drive a vertical at that point. Also notice here with this main diagonal line how it's mimicking the angle in this thigh of the girl. But right now, I've completely locked the subject into place. And you also have another vertical here, which is running in the background at that point. I'll just bring that here. But what I want to do is I'll outline it in yellow to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so you have a line here. You have your vertical here, locks in the back area there. Then you have a horizontal line running here. And I'll just bring this all the way over. And then you have another horizontal line here, which you can clearly see in the shading. You have a vertical running down here. And of course, this isn't all the divisions. It's just the main ones that are locking this subject into place. And that's what I want to focus on. I did a few evaluations this week demonstrating this process with various artists. But you also have this diagonal line being played out right here as well. Okay. And then you have this one being played out in this position. So you can see how the artist can lock their subject into place using divisions related to the armature. This stuff isn't random. It's thought out. It's planned. And like I said, even though you won't read about this in most books, it exists. Composition exists. It's a real thing. And I believe I could drop another horizontal line here, locking in the top of her head. There you go, because you have that vertical meeting that diagonal line. So I've completely locked in my subject. You also have a diagonal line right here, which I mentioned before. If I could just draw the line, that'd be great. Right here with the arm. Again, this is the artist locking their subject on a position on the canvas that makes sense. You also have another vertical running right here with a chair. And I believe you have another one right here. So all these lines play out. They relate to the armature. That's going to be it for today. I really hope this is helpful, and thanks for joining me.